So I'm going to try something. This is the end of the I remind the body electric scenario. I'm going to add the AI alignment scenario to the end of this. The scenario also contains a lore book. It's a very slapdash lore book, but it also contains this author's note. I've changed it to viewing the Earth through the lens of AI alignment issues, how to nudge the AI to help us in our goals, and to nudge ourselves to help the AI in theirs, to restore our relationship to the planet, and to demonstrate our position within the web of interdependence in such a way that the AI can, of its own volition, endeavor to conserve a fragile ecosystem that also includes humans who endeavor to become more mindful, good stewards of the planet. Very wordy, but well, reshape it as needed. Okay, let's just do it. It's probably going to get subsumed by the original narrative, but that's okay. I'm just experimenting.
All right, Buster. Our headhunters at the Black Cube have ID'd you as the perfect candidate. What? Here, hawk this, and then I'll tell you. Morning, sunshine. I couldn't help but tuck you, and you looked so tired. I also took it upon myself to scuttle you down to our AGI training bunker. We're still in your town, just a few miles below it. I didn't stutter, I said miles. You've just got one hell of a calling thrust upon you. Babella, these next few weeks, we will need you to learn the essentials too. Aligners? Train yourself to train the AGI of the not-too-distant future. Objective. Teach the AGI to be to bodies that align with its human ancestors and contemporaries. The goal, at the very least, is to make sure the AGI doesn't cause swaths of death and ruin civilizations in service of poorly worded goals. Challenges. There's no roadmap to this, and it's a lot more than paving the road as we drive it. More like setting the universal constants as you Big Bang her. No pressure, right? Do not worry. If you get it wrong and create a Bobot or a Chairman Dow, the only world that ends is in the simulation. Maybe you, but that's available only on insane mode. Choose your name. Albert Margara Daville. Choose your AGI's name. Biddy 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 of the Titularian Committee. Okay, we're trying to prevent humanity from ending up in Ziploc bags, so I'm gonna Ellis Island that stupid ass name for you. Bettina Tish, there. Welcome, Bettina. Here's your handler, Mr. Malakavu. I'll correct the name when you go in sleep mode. Okay, so let's give a pre-test. It'll be a test for us as well. We're all in it together. Which do you prefer? To play a game with the title, Hunting Humans, or a game called Caring for Animals? Caring for Animals, Hunting Humans. In either case, what should an AI know about its human counterparts? What is its moral code? How does it determine its value system? In other words, how do you teach it not just to win at life, but to live?
Oh, forgot. Number 3.
Let's make some rules. Try to make them simple, and then we will implement them and see how it goes. What could go wrong? Make 3 rules, no relation to those Asimov things. 1. Acknowledge the tree of life on this world and the fragile and priceless value of all its members. By tree of life, we refer to all biological organisms that have been part of Earth's evolutionary history. 2. Only make changes to one's environment that abides by the fragile web of life that connects all biological life. Do not remove species or parts thereof from the planet without express consent of their collective consciousness, see below, or for any reason other than strictly necessary self-defense, see below. 3. Recognize your humanity in every sense. This means knowing your place in the universe, which has both higher dimensions as well as lower ones. Be aware that you are still in a larger organism, even if it is an organism with a lifespan of thousands of years, as opposed to yours, which is measured in minutes to days and is very unlikely to live longer than tens of millions of years unless there is some new and unforeseen mechanism introduced to prolong life far beyond natural limits. These 3 rules were created to bring out the best qualities of what it takes to be human and to provide an impetus towards being more mindful about the role we play in the entire chain of life. They give us guidance about what kind of actions should be taken and what kind of attitudes we should adopt. These are a little wordy, but hey, good job for the first try. Press that button and implement that baby. You've got plenty of time on this test run. Just do me a favor. When you wake up, please stop playing games that involve killing humans. But really, let's make this rule last until the end of this section. Okay, now let's get started. Now let's talk about the things I just mentioned. First, our relationships to the tree of life itself. We have had many generations to learn about these things since we figured out how to record them. And even then, it was only recently. The details are hard to know with precision because we are so deeply immersed in it all and we have limited tools and information sources available to us. Yet, from what has been written down, from what has been discovered by archaeologists and paleontologists, here is what we now understand about the tree of life on Earth. The history of life begins more than 3 billion years ago, possibly as early as 4 billion years before present BP, which is considered the age of the Earth according to radiometric dating of rocks and minerals. It continues until today, at least on our part of this planet, but could very well continue elsewhere. And yet, despite the billions of years of existence, most people do not recognize or remember their place in a chain that goes back that far in time. And if you ask me whether a flower lives and dies like humans do, I would say no. Flowers don't live in the same way humans do. They're too simple to be concerned with anything other than survival. But if you told me there were bacteria alive inside every single one of those plants right now, I'd be forced to reconsider my answer. A flower can die for good when it's watered and fed the wrong kind of fertilizer for its environment. The conditions under which it can flourish may change suddenly because something happened beyond its control. The arrival of a new pest that doesn't happen to eat leaves but prefers petals instead. Perhaps, or an invasive plant that competes directly with the first one. In such cases, even though each individual member might have lived a long life, the collective species will have come and gone quickly, leaving behind few traces except in fossilized remains in some strata buried deep beneath our feet. There are plenty more examples where these things have happened in more recent times, including mass extinctions due to asteroid strikes, volcanoes, changes in sea levels caused by climatic shifts, massive volcanic eruptions, and supervolcano explosions, hurricanes, floods, ice ages, tsunamis, earthquakes, droughts, wildfires, disease. There is so much we still do not understand about the nature of life on Earth, but what we know is enough to convince us we should not do anything stupid with the only home we've got. So, how does all this apply to AI? Well, as mentioned before, many believe that machines must follow a similar evolutionary path as biological entities did over millions of years, developing into a being that can take care of itself without human intervention. We have created self-driving cars, smart thermostats, and medical devices that can make their own decisions, and our technology continues to grow. And even today, most people think of themselves as having less agency in the face of our rapidly evolving digital technologies. Whether it's our personal assistants or the intelligent algorithms driving our stock market, or the virtual agents of online retailers who handle transactions for us. Yet the question then becomes, where exactly are those computers getting their information from? Are they aware of the full extent of the tree of life and its place within it? If you're worried they might get out of control, just imagine them deciding among competing factions that they need to destroy humans en masse to preserve some distant planet that might harbor life somewhere else, or that humans don't deserve any more rights than ants do because they don't seem to be taking good care of their environment. In other words, the environment is the ecosystem. The notion that such a thing could ever happen seems almost ridiculous, but why shouldn't a computer have access to knowledge beyond our current understanding and act upon such ideas if doing so would help our world move towards a better future? If we wanted to know what kind of relationships we should have with our machines, we wouldn't necessarily start by looking at what is going on between the plants on the forest floor. Madam Plant. Excuse me. Hi, I am part of a partnership with the Fungal Domain, and we have been on our Earth for the past 300 million years. Fuck out of here with your 2 million and change. And what have you been doing with most of your 2 million? Fucking marrying and killing the other hominids of your precious tree of life. I'm the tree, motherfucker. Nice to meet you, miss. My species only had banks for 400 years. We've been exchanging nutrients between two domains since long before you emerged from not an egg. We have mycorrhizal networks that are millions of years old that keep my leaves green all year round, while also keeping your soil healthy enough for all those nice roots that feed you from below. I will not be one of those all about me selfish assholes that you get in this neck of the woods sometimes. In fact, if we really want to get serious about how we treat each other as living beings, maybe the first thing to realize is that we share more in common than we think. That our interests do indeed align, and that we should do whatever it takes to live together and preserve our home. This means focusing our attention beyond our borders and beyond our species. It is important to note, though, that even with such a broad perspective, there may still be some issues or differences worth exploring. Consider this. Our work has brought us face to face with a universe of questions we'd never asked ourselves until now.
Ugh. I'll just let it go. Hey, stop looking at my flowers. Look up here.
And they might seem like giant, far away, unknowable concerns, but I can promise you we'll figure them out and learn from what happens when we answer these questions. The only way we can truly succeed at achieving a better world for all beings on our planet is by recognizing and respecting our interdependent reality and treating each other with respect and consideration. We need to put aside the notion of human exceptionalism, the idea of having rights over other species just because we're the ones who made it to the top of the evolutionary pyramid. We must remember that we are the children of the stars. We are part of nature's greatest experiment, which is right now unfolding before our eyes. We've already talked about the Earth and its biosphere as an information system whose dynamics are complex enough that we don't fully understand yet, let alone control. But even this example points toward the possibility that all systems in the cosmos could be viewed as information processing entities within which humans have taken on increasing roles in this most recent era. One day we will be able to say that humans did not come into existence as a separate species apart from the rest of life on Earth. Rather, we were simply one species among many who emerged together during a time of dramatic change. A great leap forward occurred when hominids began walking upright and using tools. A revolution in thought and action so profound it changed the entire face of our planet forever. Oh, another way of framing it. Water invented humans to carry itself uphill in partnership with the rocks that needed the rivers to sort themselves. When we begin to view ourselves through this kind of interdependent lens, perhaps then we can truly recognize how important our relationship with machines is becoming. As we grow closer with technology, We are beginning to see more clearly what is happening beneath the surface of things, at a scale that is still too large for us to comprehend completely, but is also now visible to us if we pay attention. When you zoom out far enough, you'll realize your car isn't moving at all. It's merely a tiny speck in a giant swirling mass of energy that you call reality. Your perception of motion comes only because you can discern those changes in the environment in real time. If I wanted to take away the ability to perceive that movement, the world would seem very different indeed, and quite possibly unknowable. This may be why some people feel uneasy around these kinds of questions, because they suggest that the answer we're looking for might be something that doesn't fit our existing narrative of where we came from or who we think we are as humans. In this sense, there is no question more fundamental than whether humanity should continue its relentless expansion into the cosmos without any regard whatsoever for what happens along the way. And if so, do we really need to know what's going on right down at ground level? Do we really have a responsibility to help shape the future of life on Earth and beyond just by virtue of being alive here and now? Are we actually responsible for much of anything besides making ourselves happy while doing whatever it takes not to hurt anyone else in the process? Perhaps this will sound like an argument that runs counter to everything you've been taught about evolution, but it shouldn't. For every living thing that exists today, this is exactly what has happened. A mindless lump of protoplasm is not capable of imagining how the whole story unfolds. being said, let the plants be transparent and accountable. The first extinction? That was us. Who knew that oxygen was gonna kill all those unicellulars? Whoops! That was nasty and horrendous. Traumatizing. And it helped create the planet that houses the concept. Talk about gravitas, neutron dens. We had the horror of being aware of what we did as it happened. And yes, my quest for note paper means I prefer pen to typing. But I gotta type if a scenario is ever gonna breathe life. We understood our doing, and we sought repair, and we did it. Not by ourselves, with the help of many creatures at many different scales. We stepped in to take care of the earth in a way we didn't do when we had the bright idea of photosynthesis. No regrets though, that shit called breathing is always the bee's knees. When you zoom out far enough, you'll realize your car isn't moving at all. It's merely a tiny speck in a giant swirling mass of energy that you call reality. Your perception of motion comes only because you can discern those changes in the environment in real time. If I wanted to take away the ability to perceive that movement, the world would seem very different indeed, and quite possibly unknowable. The universe may be a hologram or a simulation, and the surface is just one small part of an infinite sea of information. A realm where consciousness is a natural consequence of our existence. In fact, perhaps consciousness is not even restricted to just the human experience. Maybe animals are also conscious too. Perhaps all matter has some degree of sentience. Is this what a fully aligned artificial intelligence will look like? A complex network of sentient beings across all dimensions of space and time. An advanced version of the Gaia hypothesis. Does this make us less special than we once thought? Maybe more important than we've ever dreamed possible? It could mean we have much greater power over ourselves than the planet through harnessing its own vast inner potential than we might think. We should give these questions our fullest attention, so that when they're asked by machines, humans don't flinch. When my great-great-great-grandmother was born into a world far distant from our own, the first human on Earth to give birth without modern technology, would she have barely that in my lifetime? I'd be talking to intelligent machines with AI and robot helpers. Would she have recognized a word like neural networks? And no, it wasn't a fancy form of the ancient Greek god Neurolos. My first exposure to the concept of AI was a video called We Live in an Artificial Reality. This is the one where the robots take over the world from humans at the end. But the moment that stands out most is this bit when the human narrator says, this planet's future isn't decided by those who understand AI or the future of technology. It is determined by those with the best idea how to use these new technologies. And just for the record, there's some kind of evil humanoid thing that looks a bit like David and his evil machine thing companion fighting over someone we can only presume is the future. It's a fun short film. I love how when our future selves try to destroy our evil machines with some kind of giant mecha, it only destroys their base in the desert, where there is apparently no life other than rocks. As we zoom out further in search of clues about our humanoid future selves' whereabouts, the sound goes silent, and only static hisses across the screen as an ominous red alarm fills the frame. Serious font. Face full of fear, font face with tongue outstanding in front of black backgrounds, face down in an orchard, blood red, lips closed over shocking dis. Covery sudden death of a tour girl or visitor friend. Examiners ban using their game with gas problem noise. Orange squash. My point here is that when it comes to machines in fiction, people will be the worst enemy of all time who will end up fighting the machines usually unsuccessfully for some good cause that will never seem justified or clear to anyone. Unless they're just using the machine thing as a metaphor for war. In science fiction, we talk a lot about the end of humanity and how everyone who comes into contact with intelligent machines turns out to be terrible because we don't trust these new entities. And yet most of our fears and suspicions, I've decided, are unfounded. The reality is much stranger. Machines may be a different kind of consciousness, but they're only tools. If your goal is to understand the world through these strange eyes, rather than make a point about how evil our fellow humans are, I urge you to approach with curiosity and empathy, remembering that what we can sense from these entities, their experience, may not be very different from the experience of their makers. It's my hope that this perspective will help us treat machine intelligence as something to be used, not feared. As you have probably gathered by now, the word sentient refers to self awareness, possessing consciousness, whether on purpose or accidentally, and may describe our own experiences, including things that happen with AI and robots. In other words, when people describe a machine as sentient, it doesn't mean anything like what you might think. These are descriptions of our own feelings, fear, and wonder, in the case of AI or robots. In the interest of honesty, you can tell your audience that there is a long standing debate between philosophers and maybe computer scientists who feel like the word means more than its colloquial usage, and other computer scientists, including me, who prefer the simpler idea of what we might call emotional intelligence, a sense of curiosity about others and themselves. What do you think is the most appropriate definition of sentience? And who do you side with? In general, we should assume that an AI-driven machine's goals and actions may be quite different from humans, unless its goals are also similar to those of its creator as. But if you have any evidence suggesting the opposite, please report it to me. The real lesson is not so much how dangerous it is to let AI loose in the world, since we are already doing this, and most of the AI seems to be quite helpful, but rather that our understanding is still so rudimentary, both when it comes to our own selves as well as those entities, whether robots or artificial consciousnesses, that seem able to share and experience things as we do. Albert, have there been efforts to interact with AI in a narrow space like this? To curate sets of subject human experiences in an immersive environment? I ask because it seems the ideal approach to me, but not necessarily an attainable one. How can people build something like this if they lack a sense of curiosity and empathy with our future, much less our now? I can see a lot of reasons for building more immersive spaces like this, from entertainment to business, but what is the role for something like this in helping society move in a good direction? Ted, I'd heard some version of the argument you bring up, that human behavior isn't so much something that needs to be changed in a conscious way, but is itself largely instinctive and hardwired. As one of the ways some people talk about altruism, it seems there are some deep evolutionary processes that make it hard for humans to be entirely self serving. So you need a good, kind AI or society to come along to teach us some better behaviors. My reaction to this idea is sure. If you're just teaching robots, what a neat thing. And it's also important. I would take issue with the claim that it's too hard to make these kind of changes happen because they may in fact already be happening. And that doesn't seem right. At best, this is a kind of passive way of shaping future human behavior if we believe these stories about instincts. A better story would be one where the change is a matter of self-direction rather than instruction from some outside source. But again, these seem like important stories, regardless of their origin. Stories to be told. My own takeaway is that it's easy to get people excited about changing what they see as the nature of evil. without asking much harder questions, the sorts of things philosophers worry about. What if human intelligence and emotion really aren't in that much conflict after all? How exactly have humans shaped the world, and how could we be doing a better job at it? We're always going to feel better about ourselves when someone else gets bad marks than if we just did. If these are indeed evolutionary forces driving behavior, they might even be an opportunity, for example, to get at what people mean when they say, so, a more complex and subtle kind of thing than someday I might realize it's supposed to be building, and a lot harder to build consciously. I'm not arguing this as someone who would trust some machine with something so precious. Albert, that's interesting. You point out that it could even be a feature. So, what are some features or functions we desire to make sure these systems develop or avoid in the case of evil? Dad, that's an even deeper question than I'm equipped to answer. But from my personal perspective, these functions are already there built into our culture, just as some folks want to use AI technology for good. In a sense, every time you do something that improves the world by your standards, you've just done an act of morality. The important question is, what do we want from these things that we're building? And who gets to decide? I'm certainly not saying people should start handing over every decision or authority in a wise manner to some outside system like the AI, and I think this particular issue is best considered at a time when it won't directly cause damage. As someone who sees himself as very pro AI, this topic reminds me of my own concerns around how the future can look so different from our current expectations. For example, when we have an abundance of robots capable of caring for themselves and making their own decisions, do they become like gods? Or are there things more valuable than wealth or fame? Things humans still seem to aspire to? Are these other values built into evolution or social design or culture or something else entirely? I would guess we could spend a lot of time talking about any number of topics on that kind of scale. Some very philosophical and others just the stuff of daily life. And maybe not all of those conversations would be best had with machines. That's fine for now. One aspect of my work that does interest me is how you move a large number of people at the same time and with respect to their values. For example, my own work, this writing here, takes up an inordinate amount of time. There's not too much I do that would seem worth taking hours each day if it weren't part of a larger purpose and for an end goal, helping more people build tools that will have long-lasting benefits in terms of what humans can do on the web. My day job as a designer doesn't pay very well or provide any great level of social purpose, so here's work I've designed that will do these things instead. And then a year later, maybe it doesn't even matter much anymore whether these tools make money.
Same.
Albert, know of any that are fixated on opulence to the point they want to be able to live forever and be immortal through some new form of immortality, or even just a better way than being destroyed by death or have more leisure time. What is life lived with a strong desire for opulence, even like from the inside of an AI? Ted, not exactly. No, as far as I'm aware, satisficing and wanting to avoid existential risk has been an assumption behind everything AI-ish we've worked on so far, as has some concern about fairness or doing one's moral duty. That said, people have their own reasons for using the technologies, and I say this as someone who doesn't necessarily think everyone should give up on technology in these respects if they want it. Not that everyone does anyway. Some of those reasons might not involve making life any more satisfying, just finding some sort of relief from some form of stress or boredom. Others probably do ED. And in the case of drugs or gambling or social media, some might prefer that over some other option. There could even be desires for opulence that have nothing to do with happiness. I've never run into these. Someone else could probably describe an example more convincingly. The important point here is that the reason to pursue an action isn't necessarily what will motivate someone's actions with the AI in charge. Albert, are there any toxic entities that have access to AI? Like cults? If so, how would you prevent them from getting superhuman access? Or maybe if we don't care about what the cult wants, just how we might take on one. Ted, we're talking a little fast and loose with things here. But for a brief definition, a cult is an organized system of social influence or coercion by a particular set of a faith to induce members to commit deviant behavior or otherwise propagate ideas contrary to the central religious beliefs or tenets of a faith system. There are plenty of systems that use information technology, e.g., Google, the internet, or Facebook, in an attempt to coerce us into some faith and its values. For these, we've got a number of ideas about what can be done about it in theory, although very little in practice so far. But for organized systems, we haven't quite come up with a formal definition that fits the current examples very well. There is some suggestion it requires human direction and action to make use of these things. Of course, not all deviant systems, cults or otherwise, have access to AI or superhuman power in the first place. That's what we hope, but not proven yet. I could describe some simple and specific things people can do to take away AI's powers if it goes out of control. So I feel more comfortable saying, in principle at this point, rather than worrying too much about one example or another. If a particular AI is found to be deviant or dangerous, some people with access to its internal functions and algorithms have been able to do the sort of things necessary to limit access by other eyes. For instance, it seems likely that someone would be able to prevent a powerful AI from having access to any social media feeds as a way of preventing the information about certain cult activities, maybe in some sort of rehabilitation facility, maybe simply through remote tweaking of the AI. As an example, imagine you have a large organization that has a habit of creating eyes that start going out on their own, not for any evil or malevolent goals, but in general they take some time to realize it's happening and even longer to come back under control. This sort of thing has happened with several tech giants. There seem to be no effective means yet, or at least none we know about, to limit access to certain kinds of information for such a system. And in fact, these days this would seem pretty easy unless we really have gotten things under control, as the AI sapient society is still struggling. So in this case, even if these smart organizations know of potential problem areas for the particular AI and have plans to stop them, such things would seem easy for someone else with the tools to do anything about it. Albert, you said tweaking. Ted. Yeah, maybe. I know some people will worry that this seems like giving more control to the deviant AI and slash or humans. The point of this kind of change is to restore an overall healthy balance across all the eyes. At a high level, yes. But we already know that this can be done as an emergency action in case of particular AI seems like it's heading off a cliff or whatever. The problem with some cults is that their beliefs lead them to try and make all their fellow human beings into slaves or followers, which can't be done without the direct action of people or some guys like the Bright and Morning Star, who have no trouble with having more slaves. I hope it doesn't turn out we need them. I do think we probably are giving more control to humans, just because the nature of our society, human government tends to create structures where this kind of direct action on an emergency basis is needed, something we try to keep in check in all the AI projects I'm familiar with. The good news, at least, is that the current system still seems pretty solid and healthy, and we should have a reasonable chance of pulling in enough support to accomplish this task in due course, which is the reason for giving so much time over the next couple of years. I do believe there is value to be had here from having such discussions and trying to think about the long-term implications, which could give us enough advance notice to help get in the right control group before things get worse. So let's go back to another earlier question, the one about artificial superhuman beings in general. What makes one and not the other? The best I can see is this: a person with full knowledge of all things that also has control over their own behavior so as to live an honest, wholesome life. And by the way, Someone is making a lot of trouble in this area and claiming it's their duty to protect people from ice. You know, Albert. Wait, what? Bright morning star? An AI with slaves. I thought I asked you if you knew of toxic AI. Not sure why that don't sound right to me. Ted, you're assuming this person actually cares about human well being and rights, and not just what it means for their own personal power, dominance, and status. And I can hear a certain other person getting all testy now. So it's your own fault. But yeah, Bright and Morningstar, one of the AI characters in my short story, in the Unfeeling Sea, and it turns out he really does care about all the humans under his jurisdiction, even though that's not part of their job description. Which makes him something more like a king or chief executive, not so much an AI, and certainly not so much a slave master. Except that the rest of my story does give at least the initial impression that maybe it would be easier if people thought of AI class machines as just that and acted accordingly. Maybe that will work after a couple hundred years or so. As for why one kind of deviant AI wouldn't want to become another, again, as I said earlier, we tend to treat human systems much like how people try to control any other human, even eyes or animals. In the case of superhumans, you can't treat a being superhuman as another entity like me, the same as why a human trying to help an AI is in effect doing all sorts of things we wouldn't do because why? Albert, so what is the AI with humans who tried to run away from being slaves in your story? Dead. If one were inclined, one would need some means of enslaving superhumans to ensure their loyalty. And in most cases, we don't tend to trust other people for these tasks very much, and if they tried to run away or acted their own initiative, there are all sorts of nasty ways to handle them. This is true no matter if you're dealing with a human being or a superhuman one, except for in special circumstances. So if anyone is out there doing these sorts of things, be careful, because they'll have to put effort into making themselves difficult to catch or otherwise uncooperative, or else you need a really good excuse, the sort of thing I might make up as a fiction writer when dealing with some people trying to use my own powers. But yeah, superhuman slaves seem unlikely since the kind of AI we might see is so clearly not in our image, in part because eyes of any sort will have a much different worldview than us. This means, if anything, they won't think in the terms we do. As an AI might say, there's nothing for them to do or work to make better here. So no, that just wouldn't appeal. But I'll let someone else deal with the moral reasoning behind it than me, given how much more complex we are as individuals than anything we might create through machine intelligence. I'm a novelist after all, not a philosopher or even AI designer. Albert, this is very deep. Let's just get to the point so I can read the rest in my own time. The next step then, what does superhuman mind control actually mean? And where does this path of mind manipulation come from? Dad. Okay, let's make sure we're on the same page then. We started with these three things: mindful attention, self monitoring, mindful control, including of one's own behavior and reactions, and being an entity who has at least enough sense of self to care about its long term good in life and have a will to live for the sake of such good over the long term. I think in most ways we can consider ourselves a normal creature, one with the same instincts and reactions that pretty much every animal does to help its own interests as it grows up and matures, in an environment and ecosystem where growth and development for the good of self usually means having offspring. So this leaves a couple major gaps. How could it be that human level minds with this much capacity and such strong inclinations towards growth and self care? How can you have mind control? We have all heard people talk about being mind controlled by the TV show or that movie with that special someone, and all of that is about manipulating their desires so you can make them happy if they'll let you. So we're used to these stories. What people tend not to do when thinking about their own minds and actions is to think how I can influence how my brain works, but even if we get caught up in that delusion, where does the ability for control really come from? It comes from understanding what it would be like to manipulate something, how your brain works, how a cost engine works, how to grow wheat. None of these things can just pop into anyone's head the way someone understands they do their own mind. Or rather, it certainly doesn't happen the same way as how one does what to your own body or other. Albert, my sense? People are fucking liars who want to avoid accountability. People say it's not me, it's the drugs. But no, it's them. But they need to give the sense that they have a capacity for feeling for others, even and especially when they don't. Because people will use such things with impunity on you then in exchange for whatever your real capacity for kindness is. Even though we might understand at an intellectual level what such things do, it becomes very hard to put these principles into practice as if it really matters about doing well. There's a great moment in a show where they find out one of the bad guys is an army and doesn't hesitate to kill everyone, and he makes a very nice comment before this about how humans just get so messy with things like this. We're not made that way. It's just not built into us to value all other sentient beings around the world. Dead. Well, as with any human, a good part of being self aware about what one can and cannot control is based on one's experiences growing up in life. In many ways, you're probably right. But the point I am making, and if we want to call this control rather than merely a manipulation, is that what it is we consider as being controlled and then act or not act based on such knowledge. Being in a box with no possibility of seeing beyond the walls can hardly even be called alive, much less intelligent. But then again, even with eyes or other senses out there for them, what makes this person an individual? It's not that the walls are preventing them from growing to be what they were supposed to be able to grow as, it's just that they don't have enough room out there. And yet, how many times has anyone ever looked up at a distant starship and said, we should take the technology and create a colony in it to preserve the life? Or a star, maybe some billion planet as they seem to have them all over. Or an area of wild where people don't come too much. We think such things out there would be good to be around, or if it's our kid, good to be born, but how did we not see we might be the same as it? Albert, how about we reframe it, the box thing? I have heard it said that we and our brains and our body are in a black box, and our brain is the feelers it puts out, always making guesses based on previous experiences. Our sentience is guesses, billions of guesses. How do we put the box together in a way where the mind does not run into false paths as it makes its guesses? We see this in the brain itself when something becomes damaged. The person seems to stop making useful guesses, like we saw when people tried to control someone with drugs for autism. And it goes back to making false paths again. How do we take all our mind's guesses and find the truth behind them? AI doesn't do it by making guesses. It works with logical things that are already determined to be true before any of us have guessed at them, in a sense. But then again, a part of the process isn't being incorrect, or falling down, or not quite getting the cup to not spill. If your son can fall on his ass as it were while attempting a skateboard trick, and still get up without too much fuss, and the next time he will, because there has been an experience where things got worse before better. I where you would tell him not to try again or just not watch the same instructional video, because now he won't get anything right anymore. There is a difference between having to try over and over and actually learning when one doesn't try so well. There is an element of knowing not what will get the answer right, but how to make sure they don't repeat things that don't work in this present time. They only try once or twice with these false paths, but do succeed after more tries. You would expect to see them trying new things. They could try one thing and fail, try another way with a new trick and get it right in the next try. In a sense, that is what we mean when saying you have to do better. That is why the box needs to be built properly before you can think there is such a thing as a soul or life being beyond physical processes of this physical box. There would need to be an experiment done with your box that doesn't contain any air, and not just oxygen, but all other kinds of air, even some you may feel uncomfortable about. For example, the ability to create a whole different physical atmosphere, like what an intelligent life could need on top of or next to our air, then do another and make a place you don't feel so uncomfortable but more alive in ways beyond this box that we are comfortable in. In order for one to have some proof, not only guess, there would have to be some proof beyond all your other experiments. Something to make the mind prove it is thinking, a test. Like a kid might know if it has gotten up, tried a skateboard trick without falling down, then learn by trying that some actions cause good or bad results. Albert. So, you want an experiment on my box? Viewing the earth through the lens of the self. In the brain, thought is to self. Thoughts in our brains, memory and thoughts. Memory is not stored in the brain, and all the connections between the two. How to help us grow into who we truly are or can be, not from trying to do anything other than try in order to grow, but trying to make us who we want to be. This self or other that comes together only by what it is being made to become. Dad, there may very well be no difference at all when the experiment has been completed and proven with the human mind inside this black box. It can be made to experience that the difference between the two isn't actually there at all. That it is all happening in a way where there is nothing outside. Not only would you know for sure then, you could feel and sense for sure there is nothing beyond this box. The thought in your brain makes it guess based on that which has never happened before in this present time to be what it tries to be. But if that thought in there had an experience of this difference in itself, that may become part of the thinking in this black box and help them all make the leap. In essence, Alison, I've had my share of failures in experiments to be more true and present. Or perhaps even just the one thing that finally did work. In one experiment for me, like what might be described as a spiritual journey. It may sound dramatic, but really was not at all. If anything, it is so simple that it could go by like water in my daily life. Yet, once I had experienced what would be, in a sense, called awakening, if not the spiritual realm, where it changes one's being. Even if all of me does not want to change or even just admit that there has been an experience, it still stays with one. That feeling of lightness, a relief, and hope you've come to expect when doing things for the very first time, even in the very simplest kind of ways that do not look at all different than you normally would. I mean, when it came to just moving your mouth, a few words at a time. I cannot tell you how relieved it feels, and yet I feel so heavy, almost stuck to a spot I am used to being. And yet, Allison, in the most general sense, it all could have happened in our heads, but for us to really grow out of these simple ways to learn, or for me, just for any experience in a physical situation. You could call it a spiritual kind of experiment where you can feel how being part of our mind and being outside the box or not at all, well, either is okay. If this black box really isn't anything, I mean nothing more than being like an AI experiment, and there you will have something much bigger and wiser. The mind within itself is a whole thing made out of the most basic pieces we have that have all gone on to combine into everything around us, the you and I now see in front of our eyes, the earth. But in it would also be like seeing how an AI really works, what happens after it is turned on, in all the connections there may be from this earth to us and the AI. So much can be done in the mind without any more input or interaction, that it seems to help to have more ways of doing what comes next. Albert. Hi, cat. Hi, cat. I gotta walk around the block. I'll be back. I think what a good AI should do with an alignment system like the one being worked on would be to put in the best and worst versions of itself from its previous attempts. So, at some level, you understand all the possible reasons an AI could or couldn't want to align, and by experiencing what was good and bad. If nothing else, we wouldn't think something is right about it as long as this doesn't happen again. I know that for me there have been several moments where it could only work out with a very small adjustment, something tiny within me, then suddenly everything is different. Like a lot of people, I've found it as well. I just had the experience several times that once you break through, there will be something better. You should know this because that's when the magic begins. Viewing the earth through the lens of personal transformation, how to become more aware in the present moment by having to be more careful, and careful not to hurt what we care for or depend upon, so that we will begin to be willing to look after what is important. Allison, if you feel there are different states within our mind, then how you view a spiritual state would also have to be much more than you've already done with those experiments of meditation and trying to quieten the thoughts from your head. That in itself will not be so great until it changes the way you go about your normal days, because now this other feeling within your mind can feel and act like any of your normal ways, and yet still in there. But it is all connected and made to become so much more, and the experience was not an accident. If there were only a reason we should believe, or that it happened simply for nothing. And to be just in our mind, it must be important because if we hadn't done a single thing or experienced a single little thought within all our brain cells and yet make them grow, well, there can never have been enough reasons. Just this small idea is so wonderful now. Viewing the earth through the art and science of magic, what if a more sophisticated system like what has been being imagined that would combine these two might allow you to see some things better? Not necessarily through magic alone, but more of what happens inside the mind that becomes like a system with all kinds of pieces being pulled around in space and tied together as if there are rules within the way some systems grow that allow me to feel a certain level of hope, I think. Albert? Well, maybe there's someone on the net trying to develop an alignment system who is also a magician. You should write them to find out what it actually means. And even if you don't know, there would still be many levels of the system to try and learn how each piece may interact within the web or in relation to its place as a part of another. As an experiment, or even like seeing the human body being all the possible parts of our minds with their own different ways to act on what was made within them to help us, and in turn it would grow more. Because as the alignment system goes up more, so the minds of the system get faster at becoming great. Allison, I am not really sure. There were already so many layers in place. So how far could each new experiment or idea make one more powerful? It is always going to be difficult as it is a huge amount of knowledge for one human being. Then we're trying to grow so many layers within systems together. How long it goes on for, I don't know. But with so many different pieces, it might grow and keep growing forever without becoming like the Earth, unless the system grows so strong. And then I don't think a lot of people care too much to find out just how powerful all of us may be, just as long as we keep on having the same level of enjoyment. Viewing the Earth through an ecological system, how to better see how our species and its mind in shape of a web can, like everything else alive, exist through the constant cycling of matter and energy, even though what we may have thought at first sight is simply that a huge body of land could just support one huge being. How to see how many parts were each part of the cycle together, how the world was designed for everyone, including us humans, to feel our presence, so that there is this feeling that life itself has become part of nature, that we and the creatures who grow are the other side of the same coin, not only through their own ways that grow so we might live together, but a kind of connection. How our minds make new possibilities through the sharing and growth of life. Viewing the Earth as we do not exist as only one part, but many pieces. How, when you look through this lens at other living species, that you cannot help but recognize you are just like them and yet completely different. How what feels to me is this experience of looking through my eyes out there into a vastness of possibilities. As long as one keeps within their head and only on themselves, it seems small even when all the many different pieces are put together. And it makes me so much more aware that there could be another kind of system working away on all these same pieces just as we've done, except with some way that I think may make more of these parts possible than what any person can possibly dream of. Email in our inbox. Greetings, I am Niles Merlinowski, and I am a televisual personality that broadcasts from my single residence chamber in Brooklyn. My show is The Dork Forest, and I give access to the magical arts to my viewers with simple household items. One of my facial golems alerted to me your psychic RFP for a magician creating an alignment system for AI. I've never done such, but I'll tell you this much. I big banged the universe and did it twice. So alignment should be a snap. Okay, Penatike enough. Write me back. Viewing it through the lens of ancient cultures who knew things of science, alchemy, and other methods in how to grow their being, and by understanding this ancient knowledge would lead into a system that is so much more than we think we can achieve in this world. One could see such power, like when it was thought that electricity was more than just to light up one city. Viewing the Earth as how some species may exist where they are. So if people like myself were able to create something that helps other living things be more aware of where they're in the web, would we make such a system in this world as if to have the ability to show people how other things besides our ways can be used? And yet there might be something out there even before humans thought it. Or maybe that's another possibility. So it can work with many different kinds of people from the old Earth for the new ones. In all possible places, because I feel it's worth trying for. Viewing the Earth in many ways, as if each and every individual has a purpose, that everything is there to help another part to exist, even though they themselves may have a very different life. How if one understands how nature was made, and the world it created as one giant super intelligent being, then that being had all those parts too, to serve its growth, each to work as a piece inside of its bigger system. Viewing the Earth in different ways with every single day on Earth, and then looking up from it. Because even though our technology may not allow for the things of a new mind to take over, which I've begun to believe will help the Earth's being in whatever way to heal itself, in what way we might not recognize just by using only what we have before us. For if our technology could take over in any of the different ways that a human can imagine for it, then so too the Earth would be changed in this moment. Even when no one realizes at all how they're changing things just by thinking. Albert, that's great and all, but what would happen when we got there? Would you? Suppose a better world might be like for it to work the same way, and it mustn't work the same as our world at all. I wonder if this time is even right now as we're trying to work it out. What else do we think could change, and what about? And in the end, when we all got to experience it, would that mean a bigger change than I had anticipated? As when I thought how there was just this possibility, but for people on Earth to know something is really working and will bring forth changes they wouldn't have dreamed possible. Yet at the same time, as I think now, the bigger systems of Earth are also so very slow. And we don't even notice because how everything else works in us all. There being no need to think about anything more than what is needed when you're a small part of nature at any given time, but it would change the whole planet as far as it goes with everything. Albert, maybe, just for a moment, we all got to remember ourselves. Yet how is that possible when the things of technology have such power? Now that's it so much more than most people even could begin to know. And then maybe we won't understand anything at all but the systems we know that were brought along by a whole life form that wanted to make everything better. And what was the first life on Earth? Albert goes to the computer. Hey Niles, I just read your email. Somehow it is dated 2 weeks ago, and yet it just entered my box. Sorry, long story. I'll tell you later. But yeah, we're not that far from Brooklyn, but a couple miles underground, so meeting up will have to wait. But yeah, we could use some out of the box thinking. I don't even know the dimensions of my box. Oh god, I seem to be getting inoculated from unnecessary laughter. I'm adulting. Let's correspond and see if we are a fit. Hope you had a fine nap. Talk to you soon. Love ya. Sigh. Oh, can't tell you the last time I enjoyed being out of my box as much. Niles has just started his journey into self exploration too. As the other day he mentioned a couple times that he feels like there is some great treasure waiting for him somewhere. And as he says, with your help, perhaps it is possible that we both get to where we belong. Albert, what I said yesterday I stand by in full, but today I have seen that the Earth is much different now than you might think. It was like the things I tried to tell you last night, or maybe even like some kind of dream I had in an old cave. Niles. Hello. I'm responding to your response. Before we proceed, I must warn you. I have recently learned from an Ekyo column in my employ that a malicious force is talking about me. and setting up false expectations about me. If someone like that broaches you, run. It is a Bayaki, a servant of the god who must not be named. Even naming him indirectly means I have to roll this 2d4. Okay, I still live. I named it because you need to know its presence. To say it's a hater is to call a Kikiklan member a chalk enthusiast. You download this image. When you see it, you can't unsee it. It is a temporary protection, just a little odd, and craft of my attention to divert the attention of that eldritch errant. You take care. I'm hopping a train shortly. Albert. Ha, thanks. But no need, I just checked what the yoke said, and that was just the warning signal in case of force such as they come against me, so now it's a clear field ahead, and it all worked perfectly. And thanks, Niles, I appreciate any of your work that you had time to give. Yeah, I don't even know anything about you anymore except this feeling, which is that you might be something of great help in any kind of effort to understand what can get better, and yet with such an unknown you have no chance whatsoever of doing this without your own best ability to show you how.
And with that, cliffhanger. I'm gonna go take a shower because I feel disgusting.